Yeah, so my session today is going to be a little bit more practical in a regard, I guess. I'm not going to be necessarily showing any slides or something. That might be a positive for quite a few people on the call, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to try and fix as much on today's session within sort of websites and practical examples as I can. I have got some slides here, but they're more just for my own structure, so that I don't go too far off path. But yeah, if at any time you see my slides, then I've done something terribly wrong. So do let me know. Um, but very, very briefly, hello everyone. I'm Danny Lancaster, and I'm the accessibility team lead for a digital agency called Nexer Digital, based in the UK. And our big sort of ethos and principle is around making sure that whatever we create and deliver it's accessible and inclusive to the widest range of people as possible. So a lot of the work that we do typically revolves around helping clients to both understand accessibility and raise their awareness, but also embed it within their day-to-day roles and disciplines as well. Aside from that, I'm also an Umbraco MVP. I've been working with Matt, Mike, Rachel, and the rest of the team for quite a few years now on trying to bring accessibility within both the community, but also within the CMS and the products and services built on the back of Umbraco as well. So hopefully that gives you a little introduction to who I am. And I am going to be covering a few things today. I've only got 30 minutes or so, so I won't obviously be able to do everything in massive amounts of detail, but I'm hopefully at the end of this, you'll get a good starting point and a foundation on some very basic, easy wins that you can start testing for yourself and your own services, and how you might be able to transition and start looking into the wider picture as well. So I've split this workshop style up into sort of three main sections. We're going to be looking at automated testing to begin with. I know there's been already some fantastic talks on it, so hopefully this will complement those and build on some of those things that have been discussed already. And for those who maybe have missed them, then it might fill in some of those gaps as well. We'll then look into some manual testing and some basic keyboard navigation, some things that you can routinely do on any of your products and services, regardless of what type of interface they are necessarily. And then lastly, we'll start introducing the idea around assistive technologies. So for this demonstration, we'll highlight screen readers, but we might explore and touch upon a few different types of those as we go through today's session. So first thing, and again, don't mean to just repeat what's already been said, but a large portion of what we're going to be discussing and highlighting often gets mapped to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So they're sometimes referred to as WCAG or WCAG, but they are an international framework that allows us to assess and ensure services meet some level of accessibility. They're particularly impactful because it doesn't matter, necessarily what sort of region, industry, or even service or product you're working with. You can use them as a common reference point. And at the moment, there's such an heavy overlap between sort of compliance and the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But the clue is in the name. These are guidelines on how we can create more accessible services with the idea that we build on top of them. So they have quite a range in terms of the principles and the characteristics and the success criteria involved in them. But it's always got that notion that they lack on two sort of fronts, really. The first one is that although they've made adaptations and extensions to the guidelines over the years, there's still quite an argument to be said that, particularly around cognitive impairments, it's still sort of criminally overlooked within those guidelines. And secondly, how do I say this? They're ironically very inaccessible to read. I don't know if anyone has actually sat down and tried to read those guidelines, but you either really need a high level of accessibility or a high level of development to really understand their implementation. And there's still a little bit of subjectivity to them as well. So as much as I've just bashed them there for 2 or 3 minutes, they are incredibly important and incredibly useful for us. But our sort of attitude towards them is never to be fixated too much on them, that you use them as a way to sort of completely stop yourself from considering flexibility and adaptability to your services as well. Use them where's appropriate, but always have that idea in mind that there is only so much set out in there, and if you really want to make something truly accessible and inclusive, there's significantly more that you need to do that falls outside of those guidelines. But they come in lots of different forms. The W3C is where you can find the official list of the success criteria and everything like that, and there's lots of different sort of ways to display this information. I found this WCAG quick reference quite helpful in my line of work. It allows you to filter down by the success levels, the versions, allows you to include things like the highlights for the descriptions or which one's the latest extension to 2.2 that got released in 2023 towards the end of it. So there's a lot of value in using a reference point like this to try and get a better understanding about some of the principles around accessibility. But like I said, the best examples of real inclusive experiences come from user needs and not just sort of checklists for a better choice of words. When a lot of delivery teams focus too much on WCAG, it does turn into a tick box exercise. So considering around how your users are actually navigating and using your service will go a long way for it. So as part of this workshop, I might reference WCAG in some capacity when we go through the issues, and much more be speaking from the impact to the user point of view, because I think that's more important to highlight, if that makes sense. Sure. Next on then, we're going to start with our first section around automated testing. So again, there's been lots of good demonstrations and examples around automated testing and its value. So just to reiterate then that these are typically third-party tools, and one of the main benefits behind them is they allow you to quickly scan and highlight accessibility issues and your services. They are typically done on a page-by-page basis, particularly for the free tools. If you were going to look into some of the more premium options, then they can do site-wide scans and things like that. But all the tools that we'll be showing today are all free, no purchasing or anything like that required for them all. And as I might imply there's quite a lot of tools available in terms of automation tools, but they all typically break down the findings in give or take 3 major categories. So there's errors, and they are direct violations of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and therefore they've got to be fixed from a compliance point of view. But there's also warnings, which don't necessarily violate the guidelines, but they may improve accessibility or usability in some cases as well. So because of the nature behind them, it's often important to consider them equally as important as errors in some cases as well. And the last section typically comes down to sort of feature and review items. So that is that they've identified an accessibility attribute, but as accessibility is very much a human-first approach, it always needs that human to actually verify or not whether it's either an issue or not, or whether it's implemented in the right way. And we'll highlight some of that as we go through this session. So I'm going to now show you some of those tools in action. You only do it once, but I chose a random example off the web where I found something, and I got a little bit of stick afterwards for it, not in this community, but on a different one. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to be mainly using this internal resource that we developed at Nexer. It's a playground, for a better choice of words, and where you can spot accessibility issues, like an accessibility hunt. Probably worth saying at this stage, 10 minutes in, that I will share a resource pack with all the links and all the tools and everything that I showed today as well. So this is included in there. It's just a way for you to start experimenting and try and find some of those issues for yourself. There's probably more issues than I know about on this. It's built purposely poorly, but it's really just for us to start using as more of a training piece. So this is what I'm going to be using to show most of the bad examples, but the same principles as anything that we find here may be applicable to your services, in which case we would highly recommend having a try for these things yourself, either as we go through today or following this in your own time. So all my caveats done, I think. Just check some notes. Yeah, I've covered myself in every way, shape or form I could possibly do there. So yeah, so the first tool I'm going to be showing, appreciate I've just before lunch, this was demonstrating more better than I'm probably going to show here, but it's just for my own structure that I put together before I knew that was happening. is that I have a Chrome extension installed called Wave. So you can either install the extension or you can go to wave.wavemain.org and use the URL there to search to do the same results. But what I would do is I would go to this page and I would run this. It presents me a dashboard on the left-hand side. And in here, we get some high-level information straight away. Errors, contrast errors, alerts, features, structural elements, and ARIA. Very conscious, like I said, that Nurek's just gone through this, so I won't spend too much detail on this tool. But it's a really, really nice way for us to start identifying where issues exist. It injects a lot of content onto the page as well, and that can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming, should I say. So what you can do with this tool is, so if you were interested in ARIA, for example, is you can start filtering this off and just cleaning up the display a little bit to start finding things that are suitable for you, or if or elsewise you could disable the others and just look at where ARIA is being used and things like that. But it's a very nice tool in the sense of that I can start getting an idea about where some of those accessibility issues lie. So if I go to the first one here, missing alternative text, click on the icon, it takes me down to the page, maybe a little bit too far there, but it takes me down to the page, and if I hover over it, then it gives me a dotted line to identify what the image is that's the issue. If I want to find out a bit more about it, I could go to the little eye icon next to it, and in there it gives me detailed information about why it matters and how to fix it. And if the WCAG references really, floats your boat in every way, shape, or form, then it does provide those guidelines and standards there, so you can use that as a reference point to quickly go to the to their standards and information from it on their site as well. But it gives you a lot of information straight away, so I can start working out where some of these things are and start addressing them. You might notice that some of the icons are a lot more present and obvious than others. So this one here, I've got two multiple form labels. One of the icons is very visible and the other one's a little bit dimmed or grayed out there. And if I click on that, it doesn't actually highlight anything on the page to me whatsoever. So in those situations, it's normally because it's hidden behind something. That could be something like a pop-up, or it could be when it comes to a different viewport, or it might be behind a menu. There can be lots of reasons why it's not visible on the page load. So to encounter where those issues might lie on your services, you can open up the code banner at the bottom, click on the icon again, and it will take you to the code snippet in there for you to locate it. Likewise as well, you could also turn the styles off as well, and that makes the icon not grayed out, for a better choice of words. And then when I click on it, it does take me down to where it is. So we've got another two searches, one on desktop and one on mobile in this case, which is why the same issue is reported for both of them. But a very, very useful tool that can allow you to start finding stuff quite quickly. That all said, though, there are some sort of significant limitations around both this tool but automated tools in general. So, for example, here it's identified to me that the click here button, is it on this one? The second one. So this click here button on my in my hero is failing from a color contrast point of view. So I can go to the color contrast tab and I can see the foreground color, I can see the background color, and I can see the ratios, which given the normal text size and the WCAG AA requirements, then it fails from that point of view. So yes, it does give me that information and is accurate in that sense. However, what it doesn't miss, or what it does miss, is state changes and interactivity points. So here, if I was to hover over this, if I reload the page and I hover over it, it goes white on white. And that is arguably a far higher issue because the text becomes completely unreadable in that state. So it's not like there's a priority over color by any means, but the fact that it doesn't identify at that point brings into the question about challenges around using the tool. It's very, very effective, but it has got its limitations. And the other thing it's not great at is around that idea about human interpretation that I mentioned before. So here, for example, under our features, and honestly, the amount of people who come to me afterwards and say, oh, I didn't check the features because it's green, it's got a tick, that's all really good accessibility stuff, right? So we don't need to verify anything there, but they really do miss that number one rule around accessibility and that human first approach element to it. So here we've got alternative text being used, so a text description of an image. And these images here are icon of graph, icon of map, icon of shield. They do describe what the image is, but it doesn't provide much context to the user. And that's something that's really important with all of this, is thinking about context behind anything you do, and particularly around images and stuff like that. So if I scroll down here, we've got dog, code, and notes. Yes, again, it serves the purpose of what it is meaning to, in terms of describing what's on there to a degree, but there's no context between what this note is in terms of marketing, and it's obviously trying to about the actual images and the descriptions within the text itself. So, and last example, if I couldn't get through to you on any of those other ones, then how about this one? Again, alternative text being used, good stuff. But then you check the alternative text and it's blue speech bubble 221938.jpg.copy 4333. Like, it's just complete nonsense, right? And that's not something that's coming up within this tool to say that that's an issue. It's not describing at any point that that's problematic. So ensuring that you're testing these things for yourself is absolutely essential to it. Like I said, there are other tools that can that test for different things. So another one that we quite like using quite a lot of recently is Arc Toolkit. We may not have explored this one before, but again, it's a automated tool. You can get it from the Chrome store. Don't think you've got a public URL for this one, but you can run tests, and you'll notice that significantly more errors are coming up in this tool than in Wave. So it tests for not completely different things, but different things in terms of its outputs. And things like the idea behind that problematic alt text, those three are now showing those icons as problematic alt text because it's got the word icon in it. And additionally, it's found the one in the bottom as well. Now, I'm not saying Arc is a better tool than Wave, because Wave is still sort of my go-to. I use Wave first to get a base understanding behind a page. But it's really important that you don't put all of your eggs in one basket. They test for different things, combine them together with something like Arc, which does quite a nice job at looking for those things as well in a different way. Also in Arc as well, under the highlight tab, it's got some nice ad hoc tools as well. So things that would be requirements, again, in terms of those WCAG requirements and things like that, is you can check things like the text spacing. That increases the text between characters, particularly helpful for people who have cognitive disabilities, dyslexia, or learning disabilities as well. All these things can quite help in terms of allowing them flexibility and adaptability in how they read your content. And the same with things like check page reflow as well. So changes the screen resolution, zooms in by 400%, and allows you to look at it from a very different viewport. And this is why, mobile first design is essential when it comes to accessibility. It needs to be able to scale from the smallest viewpoints upwards, because you can't expect or assume that everyone who's coming to your service on the desktop side won't see what it might look like on a mobile on that screen, because of the way that they zoom in and adapt and change the text to their needs as well. So yeah, mobile first design is still sort of absolutely essential for making sure that we're thinking about accessibility from different points of view. It's like just never do a live demo. But yeah, really have a play with these tools, because it can really be helpful to identify things like your headings and all sorts of things like that as well. Conscious I spent too much time. I said I wasn't going to do a long automated test, and I spent 10 minutes on it. So just to reiterate then, so the challenges of automated testing on its own is that it does have limited coverage. You're talking, I think the number before was about 30–40%. I think that's probably about accurate, to be honest with you, in terms of what it can really identify in terms of accessibility. There can be false positives and misleading results. So some of those things weren't reported. I heard Matt, just as we went on lunch, talk about how annoying it is for the color contrast checker within Wave, because the amount of times it identifies white text on a white background when it's sort of like an image over text and things like that is it's amazing how often that happens. So it can give you some false information as well. But it's all about this idea around it really doesn't understand context or interaction points or dynamic content and things like that as well. So good to use, but can only be used so far. Just while we are on Wave and WebAIM and the reference from there, another resource that I found incredibly helpful when we're talking about accessibility is around the WebAIM Million. I think it was referenced before, but for those who didn't see it, yeah, a really fascinating report that gets done every year and allows you to see about the state of play from the top 1 million websites and the type of accessibility challenges and barriers that are found on there as well. So really nice resource to go to. But I did promise that we'd do a little bit of manual in here as well. So we're going to look at some keyboard navigation. Now, lots and lots of people use keyboards to navigate. So one of the ones that comes to mind maybe straight away would be maybe someone who'd be using a screen reader technology that would read that information back to them if they were blind or had vision impairment or something like that. But there might be lots of other people who use keyboards. So people with motor impairments, repetitive strain injuries, people experience tremors, temporary injuries as well. I talk about regularly about when I broke my shoulder the other year from playing football, and for 6 weeks I was quite restricted in using keyboard only. So I really started to understand the need behind making sure that everything was what's referred to as keyboard friendly. But the idea is that we're going to be should be able to do some basic keyboard commands by using the tab key on our keyboard. So I'm going to use the BBC example. I've gone to the sports page because the news at the moment and their homepage is just so depressing. So hopefully the sport, it might offend a few people, some of these, but hopefully nowhere near to the limit of what the depressing news pages are. But I'm going to go through this page just using the tab key on my keyboard. And what you should be able to see is that as I navigate down here, my focus goes onto the BBC logo. And I know it's on the BBC logo because it's got this black border around it. So one of the first things you should really be considering when it comes to keyboard navigation is, are you aware of where you are at any time during the process? Yeah. You should be able to go make a cup of tea, answer the door, walk the dog, anything like that, and come back and still know where you were based on a visual representation on the screen itself. Obviously, using the tab, it goes to interactive elements on the page. So your buttons, your links, menus, form items, those sorts of things. So you need to make sure that if it's interactive, it can get reached with the tab key. And it should also be logical and predictable. It should be, for most English-based websites, it should be left to right, top to bottom, similar to how you would read a book. So if I tab now, I would expect my next tab to go into the sign-in, but it actually goes into these hidden links. So these are really nice accessibility features, and they allow keyboard users to bypass repeating content. So if you can imagine, I wanted to go into one of these articles here, and I didn't want to have to go through all of these navigation items, tabbing over and over again to go through them all. I can hit skip to content and quickly bypass that content and go to the information that I need to. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tab again. And the next tab is another hidden link that calls accessibility help. So the BBC acknowledged that people might want to find out more information around accessibility and the support there. So they've put that within their navigation items for keyboard users. But my next tab then should go to the sign in, and it does. And likewise, it goes through the various different menu items across the top. Again, very clear about my location. I've got 3 dots here. I can hit the enter key on my keyboard. That opens up the menu. It brings my focus into the menu. I can go through, I can close it. And if I close it, I expect myself to go back to the 3 dots, which it does. Because a lot of interactions that we see when using a keyboard, once you do something like that, it would return your keyboard focus to the top of the page. And you'd have to repeat that process again to get past that point. So making sure that when interactions happen like that, it's logical and returns people's focus. And then likewise, they don't do everything right at the BBC, so I'd say that's not overly obvious for the search. But then when I come into the page itself, focus remains. And even on darker colours there where black might not be fully appropriate, they put a white border around the black as well, just to give that extra level of colour contrast between them. But even for pages that aren't necessarily just line by line, like the BBC Sport, there's a bit of layout to them. The actual considerations around how a user will navigate it is still quite logical, right? It still identifies different sections and keeps my focus within those points until I navigate through. So it's not a quick, but that's some of the basic things to consider when it comes to keyboard navigation, is to making sure that One, everything is interactive, it's logical, and you're able to see clearly where you are at all points. So if I would go back to my dodgy website again and try and fill in this form, name, email, I've got some idea of where I am here. Awareness course, it's gone to a red, so a little bit more challenging to see. Again, not overly obvious for the radio options. We come back to this purple for name on cards, and if I tab again, it goes to the expiry date and misses the card number entirely. So in those situations there, if somebody was coming to my website here to sign up and to pay money for me, they physically wouldn't be able to because they weren't able to provide their card number in the first place. So particularly think around accessibility and keyboard navigation for forms as well, because it's can be problematic if you forget those points. And last but not least, I promise you, I am nearly done. I just wanted to show what a screen reader might appear to, because I appreciate not everyone might have heard what a screen reader sounds like. And I haven't got time to load. I'm on the clock here. Come on, load.
Clickable banner, toolbar, add.
Okay, so this is NVDA. It's free, it's open source. You're welcome to download it and have an experiment with this. And the reason we do keyboard commands first is because it can be a little bit overwhelming going straight into assistive technology like a screen reader. So getting an understanding around keyboard navigation first often helps set some of those expectations and things to look out for. But here I've got my speech viewer up, so hopefully the audio is come through when you first heard it there, but the speech viewer should help to use the transcript. Control is the way to shut up a screen reader. Very, very important. That's one of your favorite friends, the control key. But again, I'm going to use the similar experience there of tabbing through.
In BBC Sport, scores, fixtures, news, live sport document, link skip to content, BBC homepage visited link.
So again, it's telling me a lot of information straight away as soon as I come into there. I'm now on the BBC Sport page. I've got to know what's starting to expectations in front of me. So if I tab again,
list with 2 items, skip to content link.
So I've got a list with 2 items, so I know that there's something connected to this link, and the first one skips content.
Accessibility help link.
So if I don't want anything in that list, if I want to find something else, I could tab again.
List with 2 items, sign in link.
Sign in link again, list with 2 items, so I know there's something connected to sign in. And this next tab, although it's a bell, I don't want to hear bell icon. I want to hear something that's contextual.
Notifications link.
Thank you. Notifications link. It tells me about what the expectation is, not what the icon is. Yeah, it's about describing things in the right way.
List with 8 items, home visited link.
Visit home link. So again, list with 8 items. I can start getting an idea behind it. The truth is, though, keyboard users or screen reader users won't typically just tab through things like this aimlessly trying to find stuff. They have different ways that they're going to find content that's important to them. A lot of them find and scan content very similar to everyone. Is that you can use it by headings. So if I press 1 on my keyboard,
main landmark BBC Sport heading level 1.
BBC Sport level 1. If I press 1 again,
no next heading at level 1.
Got no the number H1 there, so I can press 2 on my keyboard.
Must watch videos heading level 2.
And it'll start to take me down to the page to find content that's important to me. I appreciate I've got 1 minute left. I just want to show one last thing.
Fallon Tullis Joyce Holt, Scotland's Raj Corsi.
That one there.
Register document.
But this is why it's so important for
main
form.
Landmark. Edit blank.
So here, I've got no form labels assigned to any of these. And when I go through the keyboard, all I'm hearing is...
Edit required blank. Combo box awareness / introduction collapsed.
So I've got a bit of... I don't know the label, but I know about the contents of it.
Remote radio button not checked 1 of 3.
Again, missing delivery type.
Edit required blank.
Edit required blank.
Edit Sebastian Jansen.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Edit blank.
Edit blank as well. So what you can do to have a quick look at this, appreciate my time, sorry Mike and Matt, is caps lock F7.
Elements list.
And you can bring up what's called the elements list. So in here, it just gives you a very nice snapshot about where your form fields are, for example. So here I can see all those form labels are missing, and it's not providing any context to them as well. I rushed through that last section there, but quicker than I could imagine. But I think I'm just about out of time. But hopefully that gives you an idea about some of the basics behind what can be
Nurkaya has
from
left them.
an accessibility testing point of view. Run some automated testing, go through the keyboard, and build on top of that knowledge going forward as well. Very, very welcome for anyone to connect with me, have a chat about anything related to accessibility. Always open to that sort of conversation. And if nothing else, then I wish you all the best of luck on your own accessibility journeys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danny. It's a great practical look at accessibility testing. Yeah, I learned quite a few things there. Not used the ARC toolkit before, not seen that WCAG quick reference before either. And I liked those example bad pages. Are they publicly available anywhere? Was that a Nexer thing?
Yeah, no, that's on a public facing URL. You're more than welcome to, like I said, it'll be in the resource pack that I'm happy to share afterwards. More than welcome to use it as your own sort of training ground for it. Always welcome feedback as well. I think there's a more accessible version or enhanced version. You're more than welcome to anything you find as part of that. I'd love to hear from you as well, or your own experiences as well. It's always good.
And that tip for NVIDIA, pressing control, that's a really good one. Usually, yeah, a panic and then just close it.
Yeah, turn your laptop off, walk away from it. Then
Yeah.
it just just taking that time to go through it. And again, one of the things that we always talk about around screen readers is that we're not expert users. You know, we've got the luxury of being able to turn it off and use it without it, but a lot of people don't have that luxury, and it's more about understanding how to get through a service or an experience or a journey rather than claiming to be an expert on it, because that's just something that I would never claim to be, sort of thing. So always learning that, right?
Yeah, always learning. That's right. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Danny.